Hi, friends. Welcome. Today we are going to discuss the movie of the month for July or June, and that is Doctor Sleep. And this movie is based on the book by Stephen King, and it is the sequel to Shining. And so, before we start, I want to introduce everybody here. So we have Steve and Brandy from Steve Talks About Books and Stuff. Jolien from Jolien Reads, Jeff Lane, the author of One Way and the Champion Saga, and author Daniel Barnett of the Nightmareland Chronicles, and many others. Thank you all for joining us today. I really look forward to our discussion. This movie there was a lot going on here. I think we have a lot to talk about. Steve, let's start with you. What were your overall thoughts?
Well, I should probably start off by saying I haven't seen The Shining, I haven't read The Shining, so I went in not knowing anything that happened before. I did enjoy it. I didn't think it was a horror movie. It was more of like a suspense, but
psychological thriller.
Yeah, psychological thriller. But it was fun. Overall, I enjoyed it.
Me too.
Brandy?
I thought it was good. I don't know. It wasn't as exciting or scary as I thought it was going to be. I was like real amped up to be scared, and I think there was one part that I jumped and everybody laughed at me. But it was good. I thought it was good, and I have seen The Shining, so I liked all the connections and stuff. So.
Jolene?
Yeah, same. I liked it quite a bit. I've seen The Shining a couple of years ago, and my memory is terrible. So in the beginning, I was a little bit confused what was going on. I didn't really know how the three storylines connected. And plus, it's a long movie. So after a while, I was like, I should know by now because we're already half an hour in. But in a 2.5-hour movie, that's not that far in. So once I started to make the connections, I really enjoyed it. And it's not as scary as I would have thought, but the first half, I was watching it probably the middle of the night in my bed, in the dark. So I was more scaring myself than that the movie was actually scary. But I liked it.
Awesome. Daniel, what'd you think? Or did you rewatch it?
I mean, I've seen it like 3 or 4 times, probably. I think it's a masterpiece, personally. I think it's probably the only horror movie of King's that comes close to capturing like the heart that you find in one of his novels. So for me, it wasn't really about the fact that it was scary or not scary, so much as it resonated and I cared about the characters, and it was like thematically sound and interesting. A lot of coming of full circle sort of stuff between like Doc Halloran and Danny, now grown up. Danny, now alcoholic like his father, fighting some of the same demons there, in the role of caretaking for a young girl with an incredible gift that doubles as a curse in this world because of the hungry things that are out there. I thought it was just, I think it's beautifully shot. I think it's it's just so full, and it's quite different than the sequel. The book sequel of Doctor Sleep, because it functions as a bridge between the movie and the book, and the original movie, Kubrick's, ended differently than the original Shining, the book, ended. So it's just a very fascinating, it's a sequel to 2 different things, but it has to follow the canon of the movie, because that's what people are most familiar with. But because it follows the canon of the movie, it's allowed to claim the kind of like third act of The Shining to an extent. It's just a very interesting bridge. I mean, in any case, yeah, I can't say enough about it. Flanagan is phenomenal.
And Jeff, what'd you think? I know you read the book.
Yeah, so I think Daniel and I are sharing the same brain here. I'm a huge constant reader, big Stephen King fan, so I've read both The Shining and Doctor Sleep. And then to refresh my memory to prepare for this, I reread Doctor Sleep. Then I rewatched The Shining because it's been a while,
Wow.
and then went right the next night into watching Doctor Sleep, and that was a really good experience for me. Like Daniel said, Mike Flanagan did a really good job of trying to merge the book and the movie, which are two very different things. Stephen King famously hates the Stanley Kubrick version of The Shining, and for a long time I couldn't understand that because it's a masterful movie, or at least it's considered a masterpiece of a movie. And yes, it has differences from the book, and it ends quite differently. But I think this time around I went in a little bit differently, and I saw the movie. I saw The Shining differently than I'd seen it before, in the fact that I don't know if it was because it was the 70s or Kubrick was just who Kubrick is, but I wasn't as enamored with The Shining. I think it is what it is, and if you like it, you probably love it. But it's got some things going on that aren't perfect. If you've seen The Shining recently, there are long stretches where this camera never cuts for 2 or 3 minutes. Even scenes that it probably should have cut. There's a scene where Jack Torrance wakes up in a storage locker, and it's 2 cuts for like a 5-minute scene. One where he is sleeping for about 30 seconds and then wakes up and then hobbles over to a door. And then there's one cut and he's having a conversation with a ghost on the other side, and it never cuts off that for like 3 minutes. So I see why Stephen King has some problems with the first movie, but I thought Mike Flanagan did a really job of holding to the spirit and the story of the first one, to not tick off fans or disorient fans of the movie Shining, but then also did a really good job adhering to the book. And Mike Flanagan did something which I wish everybody did when adapting a book, is don't think you're smarter than the source material. Just take a word copy of the book and just format it. That's all you have to do. Change a couple things to make it fit the screen, to tweak a little bit here and there, but you don't have to overwrite what was already a really good book. And Daniel's exactly right. It did what a lot of people don't. It kept what a lot of people don't understand that don't read King, is that his books aren't necessarily horror. They're just great stories with great heart and great theme. And this movie did a good job of retaining those things. So I think people that have a perception of King as one thing, if they didn't see that in this movie, it's because they probably don't know King very well.
Yeah, you guys all kind of covered everything, and I agree with most of you. I was glad it wasn't a full-on scary horror, because I'm not a big fan of scary movies. I'll watch them, and if they're done really well, I'll enjoy them. But I just don't like the feeling of being scared. That's just me. And but I really enjoyed. I haven't read Doctor Sleep, but I really liked The Shining, and I did not care for The Shining movie, and so I was a little bit reluctant to watch this movie, because I knew that it was going to tie in the Stanley Kubrick movie, but I thought it was done so well. I honestly felt like it fixed, and Daniel even talked about this, it fixed some of the things that were wrong with the movie. I haven't read Doctor Sleep yet, but this has made me want to read it even more. There's been a lot of people who didn't care for this as a sequel for The Shining, and so even though I've owned it for a while, I haven't read it yet. And after watching this movie, I really want to read it, because I want to see what really happened in the book, because I know that the ending to this movie couldn't have happened in the book, because the hotel is no longer standing in the book. So I'm really excited. We have some comments here. Some of our commenters have also. Ashley says that she also expected it to be scary, and she said it was similar to It Part 2. And I'm not sure. Here she says it felt like it was tying up some things that weren't addressed in the first movies. I agree with you there, Ashley. I liked it. I thought that was done well. And Bookish Drummer says, I agree with Daniel here. Excellent adaptation. It worked both as a faithful adaptation and a good sequel to the original movie. So since we've been talking here about it being a sequel, I'm curious what you guys thought about the casting of the young Daniel and the young, I can't remember Daniel's. I'm sorry, it does say
Wendy.
Wendy. What did you think about the casting, and how well did you think that those two characters did, including the gentleman who's in Danny's head, who was. I'm really bad with names, y'all. I promise I watched the movie.
Dick Halloran.
Yeah. How do you think the casting did? How well did they do in portraying characters that were on the screen back in the day and not just characters from a book?
I kind of felt like, are they, for a minute there, I felt like, did they just remaster this little boy and the late, because it was pretty good, I thought. And then, I mean, it took me a beat, but it was like, okay, these are different people, but it was pretty close to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think they did a great job.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a while since I've seen the first movie, so I couldn't really compare back to back, but it didn't bother me that it were different actors, and I thought that they were pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
Can I
Steve,
go
have
off?
you seen?
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
I was just wondering if Steve, have you even seen The Shining?
I have not.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't. But I mean, I know. I know.
Well,
I tried.
I know.
We tried to get it.
We've been really busy.
He's just been like really busy,
Yeah.
but we tried to squeeze it in, and it just.
It just didn't happen. But
But
if you've seen Doctor Sleep, you've seen the best parts of The Shining.
that's good. Well, I looked up whether or not I could watch this movie without seeing The Shining first, and a lot of people said you don't have to watch The Shining to get Doctor Sleep. And at the end, I felt a little bit lost, but not enough to where it impacted my enjoyment of the movie. So
I think there was one part when I told Steve, "Well, this is what happened in The Shining," and then and he was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
So it would only happen like one time though, where I thought he was looking like, "What the heck?" And so I explained it to him, and then it's fine.
I think it will help though, because the production did such a good job of recreating some of the scenes from the Overlook, and I think the casting was good. To answer your question, Stacey, there were times when it bumped me a little bit. I don't think they quite got the Jack Torrance down a little bit. And so nowadays, where we can kind of digitally overlay people, like what they did with Luke at the end of The Mandalorian. Spoiler alert: haven't seen Mandalorian.
I'm watching now.
But
I'm just teasing.
He already knows.
I don't care. Yeah.
But so there is technological ways they could have brought it in a little bit closer. But for what they did, I think it was good. If they just had the Wendy and Danny stuff at the beginning and not brought it into the Jack stuff in the Overlook, or tried to recreate the here's Johnny scene, it might not have bumped me quite as much. But at the same token, that actress that played Wendy did a really good job recreating that bathroom scene, like the screaming. That was pretty good. Watching them 2 nights in a row back to back, you realize how masterful the set construction was. Like every detail of that hotel, they got right. Like every room they went in, the gold ballroom, the boiler room where it ends, like kitchen, all of that, they nailed it. The room 237, they nailed it from a production standpoint. So hats off to them.
Her facial expressions were spot on for recreating those scenes. I mean, it was. I wondered at first if they did digitally, overlay her face on it, but she did a really good job. And a little bit off topic, but Ewan McGregor, this is the best role he's had in a long time, and I feel like his talent's been wasted for a long time.
He was fucking tremendous in this movie.
Yeah, he was great in this movie, and he's a really good actor. And I don't know why he doesn't get more opportunities to shine. That wasn't our focus. I wish I was that clever, but
Can I go off script here for just a minute?
Go ahead.
So I always notice an interesting thing happen when we're talking about horror, like what's scary and not, and it's kind of important to me, and it might seem sort of like semantics to everybody else. But I notice people, talking about a movie like this, oftentimes people say, oh, it's not horror because it's not scary, and it's this other stuff. And this isn't a criticism of anybody. I mean, I've done it too, and like I've seen it happen so often. But I would just love it if, like, as a like in the mainstream sense of the word, and I think it's because of the taboos that are associated with horror, or like the kind of counterculture or fringe popularity, like what people see horror as, or even like they define it as for themselves. But I would love to see, like, instead of saying, "Oh, this isn't horror because look at all all the heart and all this, and it's not too scary." I would love to see people say, like, "Oh, horror can also be this." Like any other genre, there's different, like it can just hit different and move different and flow different, and like it doesn't have to be hemmed into this little box of gross and scary and like bad emotions. It can be, you can walk out of a horror movie feeling like uplifted and like you found some new beauty in the world. And like that's how this movie was for me. Like I was touched by it. Like it hit me, and I mean it inspired me and stuff. And like I was sad, but it was it was bittersweet. There's all these emotions that horror can reach toward and explore and like shine the light on, like emphasize, and I think that's like one of the things that I fell in love with about the genre originally, because I think that's what Stephen King does, and so few other authors manage to do, which is use horror in a way to explore a breadth of human emotion, and not just it's a lens, it's not just being scared. To me, like that's what's so special about it. I want other people to see that too, ideally.
I totally agree with you there. One of my favorite things, or the types of horror I like, is a horror where I feel so connected with the characters that when bad things happen to them, they don't have to be supernatural or incredibly scary. Just bad things are happening to them. You feel that intense emotion. You're scared for them. You're following along. That in itself can be horror. It doesn't always have to be jump scares and, gruesome gore and, body horror. But, by no means am I saying that those things aren't good for people who enjoy them. It's just I think that a true connection with the characters and having the characters go through horrific things can be just as scary as the other stuff.
And I'm not dissing those other kinds too. Like I love across the board, like all the different kinds of horror, but this is the kind that's like always going to be the most important to me. Like, has on a little brief tangent, has anybody seen Let Him Go? That new movie that popped up on HBO Max. It's kind of a western. Kevin Costner and Diane Hall, I think is her name. Yeah. Anyway, it's like a really quiet, slow burn thriller that everybody should watch. I think if you just like good movies. It's a terrible cover and an awful title. But there's some moments in that movie that are so breathlessly suspenseful with so little happening, and it's because the movie does so well making you care about all these characters, and like it reaches a level of horror. Well, I think that a lot of it falls under the same umbrella. I think Stephen King's famous for saying, like, he considers himself a suspense author, and like horror is like one room in that house. And I think that's very like a good way to look at it. Like there's just a lot of different rooms to explore. But anyway,
yeah, I think about what Daniel said a lot, because I heard Stephen King compared to another author, which I won't say because I like this other author too. But it's the difference between a scary setup first, or the plot or the setup or the situation happening to some characters, versus Stephen King that is focused on the characters. Like we get to know these characters, the heart, these are real people to us, and then a scary thing happens to them. And I think that's what I always strive for in my writing, and I appreciate books that can do that well. Having said that, though, there are other books that are tremendously popular that it's the other way around. Like Asimov's Foundation series has a drastic lack of character throughout this thing, and it's a generation-spanning thing. And you don't know these people from Adam even after you read like 4 books in this series, because it's about the thing and the setup. Whereas, and people love those books, and I like the Foundation series too. I'm not dissing it, but it's a good example of how the situation was the star of that series, not the characters. Whereas in King's book, and I think what comes through in this movie, it's the characters first, and then this scary situation they have to work through.
They work together to emphasize each other. You know, the horror becomes like a mirror or a reflection or a way to explore who the characters are, who then in turn like influence and shape and affect the flow of the horror to an extent. But things definitely agree with you.
You guys have talked a lot about the characters in this movie, so let's talk some more about them. What about the villains here? So, you know, Stephen King's really good about writing villains. He writes especially human villains. You know, sometimes they'll have some supernatural powers, but often they don't. They're just evil people, and I think that's what makes them really scary, because you can see these people being real. I know that Ashley, who's in the chat right now, is a big fan of Team Rose. So, guys, let's talk a little bit about Rose and her crew. What did you think about them? Let's start with Jolien.
I thought it was quite interesting. I must say that for Rose, I would have liked to see a little bit more backstory, but I don't know if that's present in the book. But she seemed to come out of nowhere. Whereas, for instance, the younger girl, I don't know her name, the blonde, who they meet in the movies, I really like that you can see her before she turns, and you can actually understand where she's coming from. I always like that in a villain, if you can understand them. Where Rose, I couldn't really figure her out.
Yeah, there's not much more in the book. That's about all you get in the book as well. That, you know, the True Knot is just this traveling band of people that have been around a while. In Snakebite Andy, the blonde girl, is what you saw for origin was it too.
Okay. I did really enjoy that when you have the old guy who dies, and then Rose is telling him something, that you can really understand how old he actually is. Because I hadn't figured it out until that moment. So I really liked that part.
That part's incredible. Like, it just kind of creates a different scale for them. And you sort of, I mean, they're monsters, but they've been living as sharks in this ocean, in the ocean of the world, for so long that their sense, like, of whatever morality they might have had is like a completely different scale. You know, they're feeding off of people the way people feed off animals or whatever. It's just like, are they to be held by the same or judged by the same standards even anymore? It's interesting, and I love Rose, and this is where it's interesting for me, because it's a very rare thing to say this, but I actually love the True Knot more in the movie than I did in the book. I think the book, they felt a little hokier to me, but I also think that's because the tone of the book is different. This is where some of the stuff gets interesting. I'll try not to go on a huge other tangent, but the fact that the Overlook Hotel is still standing in the book kind of influences the movie in such a way that allows it to model itself against the visual, musical tone, everything of The Shining, and even the content is heavier as a result. In a lot of places, I would say, whereas Dr. Sleep, the novel, is a beautiful book, but it's like more urban fantasy almost, with like a touch of thriller and magic, than it is something that you put next to the very claustrophobic, heavy Shining of the original. And I think everything about the tone in the movie of Dr. Sleep kind of works to uplift and support the True Knot as like a more worthy cast of villains. It makes you take them more seriously, feel the weight of their threat more. And her, I don't know the actress's name, but she puts on a clinic. Like, her performance is so perfect, so good.
Well, Ashley has to drop off for a minute, but thank you, Ashley, for joining us.
And I did like how the villains, how they had to adjust their technique because of technology, and it was harder for them to pick people off, so that their lives became a lot harder to. So I thought that was pretty neat.
So I agree with you guys about Rose, and Bookish Drummer really kind of segues us into a piece I wanted to talk about, is the scene where Stephen King is one of these authors, and his movies are the same way, where instead of telling you somebody is bad, he shows you what they're capable of, and that's how you really know what kind of monsters they are. And that scene really tells you what Rose and her crew are capable of. And oh my God, I had a hard time with that scene. What about y'all?
Debbie.
I think
I
it's worse in the
always-
book because you have to imagine all that yourself. To be
I'd
honest with
probably
you,
skip it.
I was better with it in the movie than the book.
That's probably one of the only places where the book might hit a little harder. And I feel like the book is kind of built around that scene more. Like that scene is like serves as almost like the backbone or like the nucleus for the book, and in the way, in regards to the horror in the book, that's the scene that defines the book, and everything else is a little looser and lighter and more floaty around it. Like, not that it's not suspenseful or anything, but yeah, that scene hits hard in the book. It hits hard in the movie too, but the movie just has a lot more heavy. I feel like higher stakes in the climax for sure. Feels like, or yeah. So.
Oh, can I ask? Are we spoiling the book, or books, and or
Yeah,
are we
spoil
spoiling this at
away.
all? Okay, all right. Just checking. Just want to get my bearings. I already just spoiled The Mandalorian for Steve. So
I was just teasing her.
He didn't want to watch it with us,
I didn't watch it. So.
and we watched it without him, and then we told him what happened.
Yeah, I already knew. I was just teasing.
Did you have a comment to make, Jeff, or just wanted to ask?
no, but Daniel's right actually, that they when you talk about differences between the book, the killing of that boy actually sets off the desperation of the True Knot, because in the book that boy has the measles, and when they take in his steam, they start getting the measles, and so a couple of them cycle out because they caught the measles from him. So, and there's that scene with Crow Daddy where he says, you know, we aren't getting enough steam anymore. It seems like people just don't have as much anymore like they did in the old days. That's lifted almost directly from the book. So they're kind of desperate, and the True Knot's desperation is a little bit more, the stakes are a little bit higher than, ooh, we just have to go after this really powerful girl because she'd be awesome. They're dying off really fast, and so they need her in a way that they can't really avoid. Like it kind of forces the confrontation to go after Abram.
Yeah, and that's kind of glossed over a little bit in the movie. I mean, you recognize that is there, but it's not as it doesn't feel as urgent as you're describing the book does.
Yeah.
Steve, what did you think of that scene?
Steve,
Oh, I'm sorry, me. Oh, sorry.
with the boy,
I was thinking about the book and the villain.
Yeah, so this scene with the boy.
It was difficult, but I watch a lot of horror movies, and so it wasn't. I mean, it was difficult, but it wasn't too. It wasn't I couldn't look. I mean, it was difficult, but it should be difficult to watch.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I had a rough time. I had a rough week with children in books and in movies getting harmed. So it was just another one that happened this week. I was reading a book where an 8-year-old got attacked, and I was just like, man, this week. But I also found that I felt kind of conflicted, which I think is really good. I felt bad for them. They have this family sense of community, and when they all started dying off, I was like feeling bad for them and happy that because they were so awful at the same time, but bad for them that their hearts were breaking. Her heart was breaking as everybody that she's known for however many years was getting killed off right in front of her. And I was like, oh, poor thing. But wait, she's awful,
So I have a question about that. I was wondering this, and there might be a reason for it, but as he was dying, why didn't they just put him out of his misery to prevent him from suffering? Was there a reason they didn't?
Yes. They feed off of this fear. The steam came out every time he felt fear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, every time he would like.
Oh, no, I
Really would.
but if they cared about him so much, why didn't they just
Are you talking
I'm
about
sorry.
Grandpa Flick or the boy?
Oh, I'm sorry.
grandpa? I'm sorry, the
I'm
grandpa.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
They
Well,
didn't
they
really
were
go over
feeding
that in
off
the book. They kind of have to let them cycle out. They never really talked about like
Oh, okay.
ending it for them that I remember. I don't know if anybody else remembers from the book.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess they could have mercy killed him to some extent, but I kind of get a sense of just like implicit tradition to some extent. Like there's a ritualistic aspect to almost all these little things that they do, and it might have been painful for him, but it was still like kind of an honor code sort of something or other going on there. I think.
Probably the same reason why you don't shoot your grandma in the head when she's having a bad day.
Yeah, it's well, it's interesting to talk about with the like feeling bad for them. I think is they do enough with the movie, with the narrative and stuff to give you some empathy for them, and I think a lot of that is because there's a substance abuse parallel there to the alcoholism, and which is one of the thematic things that makes the movie so in the book just like complete, is like you have you're both your protagonist and your antagonist are almost struggling with the same thing, just in a different like a personal cost of those around them, different scale of things, and it's just one of those things that, like, it's very these layers run pretty deep, and I think that's something that you can feel even if you're not like sitting and picking everything apart. There's an element of they're helpless before their addiction the moment they first take in the steam, and they may not know the cost the first time they take in the steam. She didn't. Snakebite Andy didn't. She got it from a bottle, and then now she's like, I have to have it at whatever cost. And it was like kind of the same for Danny, like alcoholics or whatever. Jack Torrance, ruining his family down the road. Like, they're taking a drink before they even meet their family in the future, before they destroy these things. I'm not saying that all alcoholics do this, but it's a hard path to walk, and these ones really hit some pretty significant rock bottom, and so it's just compelling when you have these two, like, when the cast of villains and the cast of heroes kind of mirror one another in ways.
So you talked about something about the alcoholism, and I did think this movie was very much Danny's movie, where The Shining was mostly about his dad, and unfortunately his father's downfall. Whereas here, I thought that Danny's character arc was so well done here. I mean, you see him at his ultimate low, and you see him try and pull himself out of that, and everything that he goes through in between, and then culminates in the end, where in the movie, where he literally comes to the same point his father comes to. And I just thought that was probably my favorite part of this movie, was just following Danny throughout his whole character arc. What did you guys think of that? Who wants to go first?
Jolien?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I really liked was, I think, when he finds Abra's dead and he knows that Abra is taken, and you have that bottle and he takes it, and you're the whole time you're wondering, he's been sober for 8 years. Is he going to let it all go, or is he going to continue be strong and fight for Abra? And that moment when he makes that decision, I thought that was really strong and well done.
I have so much to say on this. Somebody please go before me.
We'll save you for last, Daniel. Jeff, what do you think?
Go ahead, Brandy. I want to hear what
Okay.
Brandy says.
I didn't think about the parallels like and now I'm thinking about it. But I was kind of thinking about I just wanted to ask, did they need the steam to survive, or was it like an alcohol to them or an addiction to them?
I think it's
Both.
their food. And she talks, there's a
Yeah.
scene in the book, I think, where she talks about, you have no qualms about killing a cow or a pig or a chicken because you have to survive. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
You're just our
Okay.
cows. So I think it is their food.
Okay. Sorry, I just had that question, but I didn't mean to change the subject.
No, that's the question.
So
Because they're
think
only like
King
lifeguards.
did-
They're vampires.
yes.
I think King did something brave with this, and I noticed it the first time I read the book, is Danny's this cute little lovable kid. He has his little friend Tony from the movie. You love Danny, you rooted for him from The Shining, and you hear, oh, King's doing a sequel with grown-up Danny. This is going to be awesome. He's the hero. He's got The Shining, and right out of the gate, King smacks us with, Dan's a turd. Grown-up Dan steals money from a lady with a baby, and he's doing drugs, and he's getting in bar fights. Like, he's not a good dude. And I thought that was a great place to start us, kind of pull the rug out from under us on our preconceived notions on who a character is coming into a sequel, and then build him back up. So I feel like Dan's arc and redemption was more earned than if he just came in as the hero. He could have been very much a Mary Sue coming in at the beginning, but King took us in a different direction right out of the gate, which I liked.
All right, Daniel, unload.
All right, so this is where this is like the rarest circumstance where I actually think I like the movie better than the book, but the reasons I do are so strange, it's a one of a kind situation because I hate Kubrick's version of The Shining. Like, I loathe it, everything about it almost, except for some of the soundtrack and except for like the visuals in places. But I despise that movie. Sorry for those who love it. But what Flanagan did with the climax of this movie was come in and he made the third act a love letter to the third act that never had a chance to happen in the original version of the book. And he fulfilled King's original vision from the novel The Shining that Kubrick just threw out the window because he doesn't understand good storytelling or something. I don't know. Sorry. I like some of the Kubrick stuff. But like the decision to make Wendy like a basket of like screams and like nothing, and instead of like a strong, like interesting character, and the decision to like cheapen Danny to like a creepy voice and like a long stare, and the decision to like have like Jack Torrance in the original version of The Shining, he doesn't need the Overlook Hotel to go crazy. He just needs like a bad Monday. He's there at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
You know he's gonna like take the axe to this family from the moment when he's sitting on the bed with his kid. Like, there's no progression. He's like 9 out of 10, and then like it takes like an hour and a half to get him to 10 out of 10. It's just like all super shallow versions of these characters. Like Wendy from the original book was like a fantastic character, and so and here's where this becomes key, is because you don't see a father wrestling with his love in Stanley Kubrick's version of The Shining. Arguably, you see like a pedophilic father who just decides to murder his family at some point. So there's all this weird pedophile like suggestions and stuff going on with the bear or whatever. I don't know. But in any case, in the book, you get like the key factor of the book is that Jack Torrance saves Danny at the end. The force that's inside of him, that's he's struggling with, he beats it for just long enough, holds it back just long enough to allow Danny to get away. And so what we have here that's only possible because Kubrick dropped the ball so hard, in my opinion, again, is the ending that should have been for Jack through the son, we have the moment where the Overlook has taken over Danny. All those demons are there, but he manages to triumph over them for long enough to do what's right. And there's a character arc there that's just so beautiful. I could like weep a little bit. I mean, it was just so poignant. I mean, even the end when he's visiting her as a ghost in the room, but you haven't confirmed that he's dead until that moment passes. Like, that ending was just, I can't say enough about it. It's just the perfect ending. And the ghost lady in the bathroom, all of those things are possible because of like Danny becoming his father, except not becoming his father in the end. I mean, that whole character arc is just so complete because of it. I can't say enough about it. I love it. Adore it.
I liked it too. I think if you've seen the Kubrick film for The Shining, you have to appreciate that ending. Well, I'm sorry. If you've seen it and read the book, you have to be able to appreciate that.
Sorry, bookish drummer. I mean, like, I actually used to like the movie. It's just once I read the book and went back to the movie, I was like, piece of shit is this? Like, it made me so mad.
And Danny,
I felt the
what
same
you
way.
just said helped resolve something in my head, because I like what you just said about Dan's arc and taking the Jack Torrance role from the ending of the first book. The one piece I missed a little bit from the movie that I liked in the book Dr. Sleep was that Jack Torrance joins in the battle at the end and helps defeat Rose.
Yes.
Or Jack's ghost joins in and helps defeat Rose, which I missed a little bit because he was just another like ghosty villain demon in the Overlook this time. But I liked that they gave that to Dan. That was good.
And that is a moment I missed from the book, because it is beautiful in the book. It's super, and it's not overdone at all. It's not corny. It's just like Danny feels a breath of wind and it like pushes Rose off of something like a scaffolding and she dies. And then like when he's like at the car, he looks back and he sees like his father for a moment standing there. And that moment is earned in the book because Jack Torrance had his redemption in The Shining, in the original version of The Shining. But in the movie version of The Shining, Jack Torrance is just a piece of shit. So there's no redemption for him. It's redemption for a character that on the screen never functionally existed. And it's there purely for like King and the readers. It's just like he's just lovingly stitching up these wounds that Kubrick left all over this narrative that was so special to so many people who read the book. And so it's like you don't get King's special version of it because it can't exist in this movie. You get something that's like a very belated gift, like 30 years late, 40 years late, however long late. It's just like, here we go. Like, we get just this special thing, but in a slightly different form. I don't know. I need to shut up for a while. I'm sorry.
But I do think that Flanagan is an excellent director, and no one else should be adapting Stephen King stuff other than him.
Only him and Darabont.
Yeah, and
Certainly
Darabont's
not
good too.
Akiva Goldsmith, who I noticed was in the credits of this. Akiva Goldsmith did that horrible abomination of a Dark Tower movie. So I'm surprised that he didn't derail this one with his stink hand or whatever he puts on movies.
I haven't seen that one because I want to read the books, but I think
Don't even
skip
bother.
it.
Don't. I always say the Dark Tower movie is not based on the book by Stephen King or based on the series by Stephen King. It's based on a brief skimming of the Wikipedia entry of the series based on the book by Stephen King.
And then created by like soulless. It's like studio executives made like a movie like on their lunch break in the toilet.
Yeah. What would look good in the trailer so we can get butts in seats, and that's it.
It's going to be an unpopular opinion. I've got myself in trouble with the It adaptation, the movie adaptation, but I wish Flanagan would have adapted It
Oh, I'm there with you, 100%, 1,000%.
Yeah.
Even more than 1,000%. My whole heart agrees.
Yeah, and Flanagan, I would say, this is where I tip my hat to people who are smart, and I love smart people doing things creatively. And as I was watching the movie, as I said, one of my pet peeves is when you try to overwrite the book, and why not just copy paste. And the movie kind of lovingly went along right up into that shootout scene at Cloud Gap is what they call it in the book, where where Billy and Danny are facing off against the little side group of the True Knot, and that's where it starts to break off and split. And at first I was like, just stick to the book, just stick to the book. But it was Mike Flanagan being smarter than me in doing what Daniel said, is that he had to stitch the two together and give us our good redemption at the end. And so I appreciate him for that. And the differences that he added in hindsight, after a couple days of thinking about it, I actually like, because in the book, again, spoiler alert, nobody on the good guys team dies. Like Billy makes it all the way through. I think he makes it all the way through, right?
Even then, Dad doesn't die, right?
Aber's dad doesn't die. It's like Dan doesn't die. It's everybody in the good guys team survives, which in hindsight, that took away some of the stakes that Mike Flanagan added back in by making this a little bit more lethal for our heroes.
I'm saying it. Stephen King went all in on the baseball boy scene in the book, and he was like, "There, I did it. Now everybody else gets to live." And that's where it's interesting, because I agree entirely with Jeff. Like, going against the author's vision is almost always just so disastrous with any of this stuff. But it's a really interesting paradox here, because Flanagan goes against the author's vision for the author's vision. He does it to recreate a third act of The Shining that never happened. Like, it's just, again, I keep using the word love letter, but that's all that it is. It's just like, I love you, King. Thank you. I'm paying you back for, whatever, what you've done for us, what you've given us. I agree, Bookish.
I haven't read Doom of King, so I don't have an opinion on that.
I loved Billy's death, though. That was a great,
Yeah.
it was a great way to kill that character off. And I'm glad
I was
that.
upset.
Well, I was upset, but it was effective. I was sad, but it was great.
So infuriating. It was like one of those scenes that you feel like you could have prevented, but it just happened so fast. And that's so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Snakebite. I'm looking at the cat at the list too, but the way she laughs as he shoots himself and she's like withering away, that was
perfect.
That was great. Yeah.
So good. So good. I'm gonna have to watch it again.
So let's talk about Abra.
Oh man, love Abra.
I've heard that is pretty much everybody's favorite character in this movie and the book. And I don't get me wrong, I really liked her. I liked how strong of a female character she was. And it's such a great polarizing character to Rose. Whereas Danny wasn't, like I said, I think that this was Danny's movie compared to the Shining, or book compared to the Shining being Jack Torrance's story. But Abra, I think this was really about her. So do you think the movie did, Jeff and Daniel, since you guys have read the books, do you think the movie did her character justice, or do you think it was too centered on Danny's story?
Very similar.
I'll take a crack at it. I think it did a good job with her. I think she was. It felt as evenly. Her part was as evenly distributed in the movie as it was in the book. She doesn't physically go to the Overlook with Dan in the book. She's there through like a mind trick that he does with him. But I thought it handled that well, and I think actually, and maybe it's just because she was on the screen. Stephen King does have having two teenage daughters myself. Stephen King is challenged at writing teenage girls, so I think that she came off a little bit more realistic on the screen, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't really remember much about her from the book. It's been a long time since I've read it. I remember that she's cute and I like she's a cute character and I liked her. I think the movies, from what I recall, like the movie places her more center stage than the book does. Gives her a little bit more of that kind of like that, the weight of things. She has to. Well, she has to. I mean, like Jeff mentioned, nobody dies in the. She doesn't lose anything in the books, so she has to come to terms in the movie with like what her actions have like reaped for her family. She goes against this warning and brings this thing against herself, and it actually has consequences for her that are more significant. And I think that scene where she's facing down Rose on the road and walks through her apparition is like it pumps me up. I was like, get it, like she's badass. Like she earned that moment. Like, Rose killed her dad and she's angry now, and there's just a lot more going on with her in the movie, I feel like, that comes through. She like occupies the stage, like in the same way that Danny in the novel version of The Shining like occupies the stage, like has more weight. She has more weight as well in the movie. It's just ironically in the movie instead of the book, I think.
So, Yoli, what did you think about Abra?
I liked her. She wasn't really my favorite character, but for her, I also liked the actress quite a bit. Especially the part where I think Danny is controlling her body in the car. I think that's very difficult to act well, and it was believable. So I liked her, because sometimes younger actors, it's quite difficult to convey that, and I think that she did a good job with that. But she wasn't my favorite character. I think that Danny was my favorite, probably because he also has the most screen time. He has a very clear arc that Abra doesn't really have. But yeah, in general, I thought she was enjoyable to watch.
Brandy?
I thought I liked her. I mean, I liked the character. I thought it was she was a good actress. She's super cute, but also that whole thing that Yolene was just talking about, where she was Danny in the car, pretty good.
Yeah.
I didn't have any. Yeah, I thought. But yeah, like I mean, Ewan McGregor. I don't know. It was like the best part of the movie. And I did really like Rose.
You didn't? Good
I
for
did.
You.
No, I did.
You did?
I love her.
Everybody likes her.
Great. That first scene with her, that like cold open whatever scene down by the river with the flower, it's like so good. Just so good.
She's a good actress.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that everybody really acted really well in this movie. I can't think of anyone that didn't come across as the character that they were portraying.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wish we'd gotten a little bit more out of Abra's parents. They're a little bit more fleshed out in the book. And the doctor, there was a doctor that Dan tells where his watch is at the AA meeting. And I can't remember the name of that actor, Bruce. I can't remember his name, but he's a phenomenal actor, and that character has a lot more to do in the book. In fact, he's the one that goes out with Dan to find the baseball glove, and they dig up the boy's body. That's that doctor, not Billy. But so we'd love to see him fleshed out a little bit more. But I think the casting was right on. Can I give you another book spoiler alert about Abra?
Yeah.
So in the book, Abra's mom is the illegitimate daughter of Jack Torrance. So she's actually Dan's half-sister. So there's a familial connection between Abra and Dan. So she calls him Uncle Dan at the beginning, just so like people don't think he's a pedophile if they hear them talking. But he really is her Uncle Dan.
Not far from the truth. Yeah.
Okay, wait. So she was the mom is the illegitimate daughter of Jack Torrance?
Jack Torrance. So Jack Torrance had an affair.
Oh, okay. So she really
and
sorry,
that, yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So Abra's mom and Dan are half siblings.
Okay.
He was.
So he really is Uncle Dan.
Yeah. It really is.
In the book, do they know that, or is that like a dramatic irony thing where you know
they
it?
do figure it out. Yeah, they figure it out by the end.
That's cool.
And then also
read
kind
the
of makes a
book.
connection, like, so really is The Shining a family trait? And was Jack strong in The Shining, which is why the Overlook attacked him so much and tried to use him and was able to use him in The Shining because Jack really had The Shining.
That's
Is that
weird.
why? Is that tied to his alcoholism too? Something he tried to bury.
Right, because Dan
Yeah.
uses alcohol in the book to tamp down The Shining. So he
Yeah.
can, stop seeing that lady and her dead baby and all that. So he wants to hide from The Shining using alcohol. So maybe Jack was doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That just brings me back to that line where like Rose is just like, "You, how did we miss you?" It's just so good. I get chills just thinking about it. Like, it's so perfect.
The actress did a great job with
Yeah.
Rose.
So
I just
good.
don't particularly care for that character because she's a monster, you weirdos.
But the
At
parallel,
least-
like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was in the book. She gets like a long like walrus tusk that grows out of her face, which they didn't choose to do for the movie, but would have been interesting to see on the screen.
I like the parallel of like her coming up the stairs versus like Jack coming up the stairs. Like all those things were just like such like visual little like Easter eggs, like kind of buried down in you. You kind of just feel the parallel.
I agree, and that's why I say even whether you like the Kubrick movie or not, watching them back to back gives you a level of depth to that, because you'll see those scenes a lot differently. That was a great example, Dan, that I picked up on. She's backing him up the stairs the same way Jack backed Wendy up the stairs when Wendy had the bat in her hand in The Shining. So it's again Mike Flanagan being clever points there.
That was the next thing I was going to bring up was there were a lot of scenes in this movie, most of them in the end when they were in Overlook, that were straight out of the Shining movie, or were, they were, and a lot of them were obvious, like the scene where Danny's looking through the door and it flashes back. But I don't know I know, Jeff, that you said that some of that kind of pulled you out of the story a little bit, or when you were watching the movie. What did the rest of you guys think? Steve, I know you can't participate because for whatever reason you're too busy.
Couldn't be the 67 videos you produce every week.
Yeah. Or the 67 books I'm reading every week.
But what did the rest of you think of that? I, for one, enjoyed it. Only because I was anticipating that. Once I realized that they were going to bring the Overlook back, I was kind of looking for that, and I liked how it was kind of sprinkled in there, but it wasn't done like, it wasn't cheesy.
Yeah, I agree. It wasn't cheesy, especially that scene with the Jack Nicholson lookalike. He was the worst part of that whole thing, but the whole at the bar, and I don't know, it wasn't over, like they were over, it wasn't overkill or anything like that. It was just, I thought it was good. It was well done.
Jolien?
Well, it's been a while since I've seen the first movie, so I was happy with those Easter eggs almost, even though they were pretty clear, but that I could see and still remember some of those things. Like, I think the ocean of blood or the waves of blood that come out of the elevator, I still remembered that and I was quite proud of myself. And yeah, I like those small bits. And I think that the ending was actually, because of that, probably my favorite part, because I actually did like the first movie. But I must say, I haven't read any books by Stephen King yet. So I don't really know if I should start with The Shining because I've already seen the movie, that it might be a little bit easier to get into, or if that would completely ruin the movie for me.
It might ruin the movie.
But that's okay. It's okay because you're exchanging it for something better.
Jolien.
And I always say,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to mention really quickly to Jolien, are you reading The Dark Tower with us next month?
Well, I have the first 3 books, but in Dutch. And I tried to get into them 10 years ago and I couldn't. So now I don't know if it's the translation or if it's really the book, that it was a little bit too weird to get into for me. But I'm going to try to find the first one in English and see if I like it.
The first book is a little weird.
I'll give you the same line I always give, that everyone always gives about the Dark Tower series. The first book is not everyone's favorite, so power through the first book and give yourself a chance to at least get into the second book. The second book, some people love the first book and they're hooked right away. Some people, it takes until the second book to hook them. If you don't like it by the second book, then there's just something wrong with you and you should give up.
But like book three is a lot of people's high point, and I would say books 3 and 4 are the high points for me. So it's like Wastelands is like the pinnacle of the series in terms of the post-apocalyptic like adventure kind of thing going on there. Book 4 is just fantastic if you like westerns and like stuff like that. But in any case,
I'm going in totally blind. I have no idea what it's about.
Yeah,
Me neither.
I like that. I'm getting a westerny cover vibe, so I think it's, I'm excited though.
I'm sorry,
It'll
Justin.
be interesting to see if people that start their Stephen King journey with the Dark Tower, and I don't know if that's good or bad, to be honest with you, but it's probably atypical. So if you go all the way through the Dark Tower, you're sort of starting at the dark, chewy center of Stephen King, and then everything you read beyond that will be kind of backing out of that nucleus a little bit, because the Dark Tower is kind of his kind of core, and then a lot of his books tie into that. In fact, if I can Stephen King geek out for 2 seconds, there were a lot of Stephen King Easter eggs for true fans, like the baseball boy, Brad, his number was number 19. And they commented that, like when they pull up and Barry the Chink says, hey, number 19, good job. Well, that number 19 is a significant number in the Stephen King universe. So Stephen King fans get to go, 19. There was also when the last scene that Dan has with Dick when he visits him at the hospice, he mentions Ka, like that's what Ka wills or something like that. And Ka is the Stephen King universe word for fate or will or something like that. So another kind of Stephen King fanboy and fangirl geek out moment there. And then in the book, I realized this the second time around. You guys read Nosferatu recently, right? Mm-hmm. Joe Hill's Nosferatu. There's a Joe Hill. What's that?
Yeah, they had a little fun with that whole road vampire thing going on. They're like, let's just.
Well, there was the road vampire, but there was also in the book. Actually, see a little bit of this in the movie. Dick's talking about what a jerk his grandfather is and how mean and abusive his grandfather was. Well, in the book, his grandfather threatens to call Charlie Mank and send Dick to Christmas Land when he was a boy. So I didn't catch it the first time around. I was reading it this time. I was like, oh.
And in the book Nosferatu, you get the whole It reference. There's a Pennywise circus or whatever, or something like that.
Pennywise Lane or something like that.
Yeah. There were a couple references to
Stephen King.
To It, like they talked about a scary clown in the rain in Nosferatu.
Mm.
Oh yeah, I love that's a great line.
What was interesting was.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead, Daniel. What were you saying?
No, what you were saying is far more important than me just trying to dredge up that line from memory, I promise.
I was just going to say, when I read Christine last month, there were parts in there I was wondering if that had inspired his son to write Nosferatu, because they actually talk about, I sent it to Brandy, I can't remember the actual line, but something about a car being a vampire. And to boys, it's like a vampire. And I don't remember the exact name. I was like, I wonder if his sons read that and said, I'm going to write about a vampirific car.
I think Joe Hill he definitely throws in Stephen King universe in references. So basically, Joe Hill is extending the Stephen King verse. He's not writing his own universe necessarily, or at least he's made connections to them.
So Bookish Drummer said, yes, get to the second book on the Dark Tower series. And Ashley, hey, welcome back. We've already talked about the heartwarming ending that you loved about Dr. Sleep. So if you want to give us some more comments about what you loved or didn't love. I think she loved that movie overall. I don't think there's anything she didn't like about it.
Can I just say how amazing that scene is when Rose walks by the elevator and the blood's coming out? She just kind of goes, huh. Like, that's the perfect reaction. It's just
It's
kind
Tuesday,
of
Yeah.
It's so defining for her character.
So in the book, I know that in The Shining, the Overlook Hotel blows up. So in the book, does Danny at least go to the site of the Overlook? Is that where it ends there? Okay.
Yeah, the True Knot owns a campground that's on the land of the Overlook, and there's like a tower there at the top of the hill that the big finale ends on.
Okay.
I think, Jeff, you mentioned it before too, and I haven't seen The Shining, but I think it's an iconic movie that everyone's seen scenes from it. But I wondered, did they use the same set or did they recreate the set?
That's a good question.
They had to have recreated it. I can't imagine anything is standing. Well, let me take that back. So I think parts of The Shining were filmed in an actual hotel in Wyoming or Utah or something like that. So they might have gone back to the original. But obviously they
Stanley, right?
The Stanley Hotel, is that what the?
Yeah, it's called the Stanley Hotel.
So there's two hotels. The one that Stephen King stayed at and got the inspiration for.
Oh, that's the Stanley.
It was
That's
one
the
hotel,
Stanley.
and then they did film it at one or two hotels. I think one hotel had the interiors, and another hotel had the exteriors and the hedge maze and all that for the filming. But I don't know if they went back to that original one or if they rebuilt the sets. But either way, they killed it. Like, they knocked it out of the park. Interestingly enough, that's the second movie that came out around the same time that has also recreated the Overlook Hotel. You guys know the other one? Ready Player One. There's a scene in Ready Player One where they go and play a game in the Overlook. So.
Yes.
Well, there's also a music video where there's the Overlook Hotel. That's my trivia. It's like a Breaking Benjamin song. I think Diary of Jane, I think, is in the Overlook Hotel, if I remember correctly. It's a whole random, just like, that's cool. Yeah.
Bookish Drummer, I'm curious, did you read The Shining?
Oh, sorry, I interrupted you, Stacey.
I was just asking Bookish Drummer if he read The Shining, or she. Honestly, Bookish Drummer, I don't know your name. I'm so sorry if I should. Most people that I know that dislike it or didn't love it read the book, and they had trouble with trying to because it's not a true adaptation. So I was just curious. What were you saying, Jeff?
I was going to ask how many of you would, if whatever hotel it is that has the interiors, if you could go, would you spend a night in that hotel?
Yeah,
I would.
definitely.
100%.
You'd stay in room
Would you stay in
I might not
room
sleep.
237?
I might not
I would take a
sleep.
bath in room 213.
No, you're crazy.
I would do it. I would love it.
I'm not sure about a bath, but I would sleep there.
Another interesting production.
I'm not
though,
surprised, Ashley.
When Dan is meeting with the doctor in the doctor's office in Dr. Sleep, that set is the same set as, or I don't know, set or his real location as the hotel manager's office in The Shining.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's another little nod to the movie.
That's cool.
I didn't catch any of that. Did you make notes, Jeff? Are you
I
making
didn't.
notes
This
right
time
now?
I didn't. I was like, should I make notes? And then I was like, I'm just going to watch and enjoy.
I wish now that I had read the book, only because I think there were it's a lot there that you caught on to that was different, but it sounds like you could enjoy both of them separately. So now I'm thinking, I need to read it. I think I need to read it.
Like I
Yeah,
said,
I
right
have-
to that shootout scene, it's fairly consistent. Like it's pretty much, scene for scene, beat for beat, right up until that shootout scene, and then it starts to diverge a little bit from there.
Okay.
That whole Abra relation thing, I want to read the books.
I guess, we talked about, so before we wrap up, let's talk about everybody's favorite scenes or parts. So for me, my favorite part of the movie was the relationship between Danny and Abra. That found family trope kind of culminates through the whole movie. You have the found family, even with the true knot. But I really liked that because you see Danny in like the worst possible moment starting out. And as a fan of The Shining, it kind of makes you sad for him, right? And so you want to see him happy. And so he finds Billy and he finds Abra, and I loved that. Steve, what was your favorite part?
My favorite scene was probably when Rose goes looking for Abra, and she I don't know if she gets there exactly, but she goes into her room and they have like this little battle of will. I thought that was really cool. That was
Brandy?
my favorite scene.
I like the friendship between Billy and Dan. I thought that was cool, and I just really liked how he kind of took him in and helped him become, like just you felt like he could tell he was good, and I don't know. I just really liked I like that character and I like that friendship.
Jolien?
I actually really liked towards the ending where you have Danny who's being possessed by the spirits, and then he's strong enough to fight them off for long enough for Abra to escape, and then also to sacrifice himself. And I then like that you have his spirit afterwards, and that you can see that even though he's dead, it's still a good ending, and he's actually happy.
Daniel?
I mean, there's so much that I love, but I have to say, probably just even that last scene, it's like culmination for his character. Him telling her to shine on instead of hide it is so touching. And then the full circle with the bathroom and the conversation with the mother, where that kind of like the mother's listening to her a little bit more. There's an implication of progress there made with the family with Abra's gift and their the mother's acceptance of it. It's just it's gentle and touching, and then it ends on just this delicious, creepy note. Yeah. It's amazing.
So Ashley also liked that scene, Steve, in the bedroom. What about you, Jeff?
Can I cheat and say two? Dan's gonna kill me for this, but I did love the connection to the original Shining. Whether you like or hate the movie, I think the scenes.
I love those connections.
Oh,
Right.
good. But I thought they did this. The scenes in the Overlook were really well done. It was nice to revisit that. Like the Overlook's like a character, and I got to see another character I haven't seen for 30 years. But in terms of moments, I loved the beginning, really, honestly. I love seeing Dan climb up from his rock bottom and start to, see him when he arrived into town, and just, those first moments with Billy when he's checking out the teeny train and getting involved in a meeting and kind of finding his sobriety and finding his place, having those interactions with the patients in the hospice, helping them is helping him heal himself. And I thought I love those character moments for Dan, seeing his redemption arc start to build.
Yeah, that was really good. So Bookish Drummer says he loves the scene where Rose is in the grocery store. That was a good scene too.
Yeah, that was a good one.
The filming in this movie was done so well. A lot of those scenes, especially the ones that were in their head, where Rose travels to find Abra, and she's kind of like floating over the earth, and you see all the lights. And then there's one where Danny's in the room, and then all of a sudden the room tilts and he slides down to the. That was all really cool. I liked the way that was filmed.
The Inception touch. I have a non-horror friend who was like, it was like Inception, but for Stephen King.
All right, so
Actually,
sounds like everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, were you saying something, Brandon?
Those visuals and those camera motions, I think, helped stitch together stylistically some of the old and the new. The old, like I said, very, very long shots. Like Kubrick would just go and go and go and was very comfortable having a 3 or 4 minute scene with no shots or no cuts in it. He was also famous for making the actors do like 30 or 40 takes of every scene, to the point where they just were starting to go crazy. Like some of Shelley Duvall's like mental challenges that she had later on in life, I think she can trace back to that moment, those moments with Kubrick on that set. Scatman Crothers, who played the original Dick Halloran, like he did another movie after the fact, and I think the director had him do like 4 takes of something and said, all right, we're moving on. And he like broke down crying, like, oh, I thought it was me. I thought it was just something wrong. So Kubrick was kind of hard to work with, but those visual elements of the camera moving and stuff like that all kind of tracks from the first one too. Unless this is urban legend, I believe they invented Steadicam and used it for the first time in The Shining. So like those scenes that are tracking through the hedge maze in The Shining, all of that, and following Danny around the hotel when he's riding his big wheel, like those were all kind of first of their kind because of this new technology that had been invented. So to take that forward into the sequel with this tilting of the camera and all of that was, I thought, paying homage back to that, some of those style choices.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fun because it's like Kubrick, and there's more. It's more than just like what he did with the movie. There's other things in it too that were almost like if not like explicit like fuck yous to King put throughout the movie. Like there's something with I think it was a red bug or something that they drove in the book, right? Something like that. It was either a yellow or a red, and in the movie it was a yellow, I think. But in the book it was red, and like near the end of the movie in the snowstorm, you just see there's like a random shot of like a crumpled red bug or something like in the snowstorm, like pushed off to the side of the road, and it was almost just like Kubrick saying like, yeah, that's what I did with his like King's vision of this thing. Fuck that guy. And like, why would it exist if not to say that, So what he did to King, I thought was like really disrespectful, and I don't think Flanagan was disrespectful to Kubrick, but I do think he essentially stripped down and just peeled all the things that he liked from Kubrick's, and then just threw the rest of the wind. And so I really liked the connections, and I'm probably maybe like the only one who I agree with people talk about the bar scene that was probably the like uncanniest valley moment in terms of like, hey, that's not Jack Nicholson, but it's kind of supposed to be. But I forgive him for it because short of getting Jack Nicholson, I thought it was much like really trying to really trying to replace Jack Nicholson would have been wrong, because you can't really replace Jack Nicholson and like the way he talks and his feel. So they did like just enough to be like, hey, that's him, but we it's just like very subdued. It was fine, you know what I mean? Like I thought that was good, because if they really tried to like having a Jack Nicholson impersonation, I think it would have just been disastrous. So yeah.
So there's a documentary?
Oh, that's interesting.
I didn't know there was a documentary.
Me neither.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I really appreciate you all joining. Steve, Brandy, Jolien, Jeff, and Daniel. I know you all are busy. Well, except for Steve and Brandy. I'm just kidding. I really appreciate you joining. I think that we all really enjoyed the movie, and I like how we all enjoyed different parts of it. So I made this a very fun discussion. So we have another movie of the month next month. I believe it's Brandy's pick. Is that correct?
Let me look. Is it your pick?
I even forget what. I know I picked The Little Things, but is it that month? Next month?
Let me see.
Steve's checking.
Because I know, well, no, maybe you're September and Steve's October.
I'm October. Sorry, I know it's dead air.
It's okay. Well, anyway, so while Steve looks that information up, we do have the movie of the month every month. It's a different host each month, and we're kind of rotating. The host selects the movie that we watch, and then we discuss it just like we did today. So go check out the forum. There's a calendar there, and there's also a thread where we are discussing where we've selected the movies so you guys can find out. And if you want to join us, everybody is free to join. You can watch the movie and join on video if you want. Just RSVP and we'll give you the link. Thank you all for being here today. Those of you in the chat who joined, I really appreciate it. I hope that you enjoyed watching the video. Daniel, thank you for suggesting this movie. We talked about it in the Just Because, and I really didn't know what to pick because the movie that I had selected went off of HBO Max before we got a chance to watch it.
It was a good pick.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a good pick.
I'm glad. I'm glad that I love stories and I love sharing things that I like. So,
Yeah.
Yes. And thank you, Bookish Drummer, for coming. Really appreciate it. We will be having right after this in about 30 minutes, Steve here is going to host a reading sprint as a kickoff for our book of the month, Oathbreaker. And so if you guys want to jump on his channel at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and you could join us for that. You do not have to read Oathbreaker, but if you want to, you can join us for that buddy read, or you can just read along and chat with us. So thank you all for your time. Oh, sorry, Steve, did you find the info?
Yeah, first I just want to say I have no idea what I'm doing with reading sprints, so just heads up.
That's why it'll be fun.
It'll be fun. I'll help you. I'm a reading sprint
She's a
pro now.
Next month is Sean's pick on the forum, and he picked Nobody.
Ooh, I'm excited about that one.
I don't know what that is. I'll have to look it up.
It's the
Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah, Odenkirk. It's like action. I haven't seen it, so.
So
Hey,
then
you
that
guys
means
go-
if he doesn't have a channel, will it be on your channel? We'll have to figure that out.
He must be starting unless he wasn't planning to host, he just wanted to pick.
Yeah, I think he just wanted to pick.
Okay.
I'll host
we'll
it on
figure that
Steve's
all out.
channel.
Yeah, we'll get it all sorted.
All right. Well, Steve and Brandy, I will see you guys in a half hour. And the rest of you guys have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.